Shalom. I hope that you and yours are staying safe and well as we continue our journey through Psalms with Psalm number 38, a psalm of David, Lahaskir. O Lord, do not punish me in wrath, do not chastise me in fury, for your arrows have struck me, your blows have fallen upon me. There is no soundness in my flesh because of your rage, no wholeness in my bones because of my sin. For my iniquities have overwhelmed me. They are like a heavy burden, more than I can bear. My wounds stink and fester because of my folly. I am all bent and bowed. I walk about in gloom all day long. For my sinews are full of fever. There is no soundness in my flesh. I am all benumbed and crushed. I roar because of the turmoil in my mind. O Lord, you are aware of all my entreaties. My groaning is not hidden from you. My mind reels, my strength fails me. My eyes too have lost their luster. My friends and companions stand back from my affliction. My kinsmen stand far off. Those who seek my life lay traps. Those who wish me harm speak malice. They utter deceit all the time. But I am like a deaf man, unhearing, like a dumb man who cannot speak up. I am like one who does not hear, who has no retort on his lips. But I wait for you, O Lord. You will answer, O Lord my God. For I fear they will rejoice over me when my foot gives way. They will vaunt themselves against me. For I am on the verge of collapse. My pain is always with me. I acknowledge my iniquity. I am fearful over my sin. For my mortal enemies are numerous. My treacherous foes are many. Those who repay evil for good harass me for pursuing good. Do not abandon me, O Lord. My God, be not far from me. Hasten to my aid, my God of deliverance. I meditate and reflect on this psalm. I think of the last verse, do not abandon me, O Lord, al ta'azveni Adonai, my God, be not far from me, hasten to my aid, O Lord, my deliverance. My first reaction is, well, of course, the psalmist is in a position where he has to pray for God's deliverance and God's help. Of course, it goes without saying that the psalmist pleads with God not to be abandoned, not to be left alone. Because left alone, the psalmist really is doing himself more harm than anyone on the outside would be able to do. I mean, think of it. The psalmist claims that God's arrows have struck him. God's blows have fallen upon him. As for me, I do not feel that God's arrows are piercing me. I don't feel that God aims any ammunition at me or against me. The only being that can aim harmful ammunition at me is me, myself. God isn't set upon doing this. God only wants for me what is best. God doesn't punish me. God doesn't intend harm for me. I'm the only one that can do that. I'm the only one that can be so successful in harming myself. The psalmist claims that his sins, his iniquities have overwhelmed him like a heavy burden. His wounds stink and fester. He walks around in gloom all day. His sinews are full of fever. He is benumbed and he is crushed. He's feeling numb. He's feeling crushed. And at the same time, he's feeling acute pain and suffering. How can a person be numb and at the same time feel acute pain and suffering? Only the person who is internally confused and in despair and is cut off from his feelings, from his emotions. In some way, his feelings and his mind are cut off from one another. The flow of energy has somehow been interrupted, that flow of power and energy between the mind and the heart, or the mind and the spirit. It's just not there. And one of the reasons for that is this: the psalmist has convinced himself that because of his sins and transgressions, God is punishing him. God is chastening him. Well, this may be an ancient way of thinking of things, and this may be a standard theme in biblical theology, but that doesn't mean that we have to buy into it anymore in our age. Instead, we can translate this differently, and we can understand this to mean that instead of imagining that God is the one intending harm upon us, instead of thinking that if we sin, God is immediately going to zap us with some kind of terrible consequence and punishment. Instead, imagine that we are postulating or proposing an idea of a God who is like a punishing parent or a strict punishing teacher who raps us on the knuckles if we are disobedient or if we get the lesson wrong. That kind of model is unhealthy. It's not going to serve us in any way that will promote physical or spiritual wellness. We need to get out of that way of thinking. We need to remind ourselves that that's not what God would want of us. Maybe that might have been part of an idea of God in biblical times, but in our times, the only thing God wants of us is our peace, our well-being, our happiness, and our ability to experience love and to share love with one another. That's what God wants of us. God doesn't want to hurt us. God doesn't want to punish us. And if we miss the mark, if we transgress, if we fall short, if we fail to live up to our potential, then it is our responsibility to chasten ourselves and to live a better life and to be more mindful of the ways that we can live a more healthy existence, instead of imagining that every time we do wrong or every time we miss the mark, God is going to somehow zap us or punish us with some kind of terrible consequence. When we are sick, when we are ill, when we feel it in our bones and in our heart and in our minds, that in itself is a signal to get busy thinking about how we are our own worst enemies, how we are setting obstacles in our own path for spiritual growth and enrichment. Don't pin it on God. The responsibility for punishment or chastening does not lie with some kind of higher being or infinite power. The responsibility for self-improvement lies within our own hearts, our own minds, and our own spirits. That's the way to get the job done. That is our daily task. Thank you.